Okay, friends, we are here in the Albuquerque house. Thane is still tweaking. So he had got the brackets he needed for the sink. He got that attached. He reattached the faucet. It doesn't wobble as much, but it still wobbles. We are not sure what's going on.
It might be the way it's supposed to be. If it is, I don't like that, but can't do anything about it.
Right. So now he's going to drill a hole in my brand new sink.
$750 gamble.
All right, here we go.
You can see we punctured through the first little bit. Further, tighten this up a little better, give it a little more torque maybe, or less.
Oh, you're tightening up here. Okay.
Getting bigger.
It's getting bigger.
You can see it can go all the way up to 1 1/4, I think. Feels like the battery is getting weak.
Oh no. So how big is this supposed to be?
Whatever it's going to take to...
Okay, oh, to get both of those hoses in.
Yeah.
Oh, there's 3 hoses.
Yep.
Is there 3? Yeah, there is.
I'd say we're getting pretty close to the maximum size there, so...
Okay.
I don't want to drill any further than I have to.
Okay.
So we will do some test fitting. Hi guys, Thane and Judy and our special guest Charlie. He'll introduce himself and his background here shortly. but we're kicking this off and giving you some interesting history. So Charlie, why don't you go ahead and
Okay,
introduce yourself?
I'm Charlie Probert. I'm with the Cavnar group at Keller Williams, based here in Albuquerque. I also cover the Santa Fe market for the Cavnar group. There's 3 of us in the Cavnar group, and I'm probably the oldest and longest realtor in the group, having been involved in real estate in Florida and New Mexico for 20 years. Actually, probably a little bit longer than 20 years after spending 30 years in the banking business.
Wow,
So,
nice.
I originally got involved in real estate in Florida after getting a little tired of the banking business, where you always wondered who you're going to work for next, with all the mergers, acquisitions, downsizing, so on and so
Right.
forth. And a friend in the community that I lived in Florida said, who actually sold us our house there, have you ever thought about real estate? And so I said, well, no, but maybe I should go get my license. So I went ahead and got my license, and initially worked in that community for the developer. It was a golf course community on the west coast of Florida near Sarasota, Bradenton. And that's where I cut my teeth in real estate. There we were selling home sites. Basically they were half-acre home sites. Some of them on the golf course, some of them on the Manatee River, so on and so forth. And we also had a captive group of 5 custom builders. So we would work with our clients not only to find them the right lot to buy, but then coordinated with the builders to pick the one that they felt could best meet their needs in that. So I stayed with that group for a couple of years. Then I was lured away to sell waterfront real estate, still in the same area, waterfront condominiums and homes directly on the Manatee River on a marina. And we got to sell not only condominiums and homes, but we sold boat slips, which was basically people buying a platform that went out into the water. So that was interesting times. And then I stuck with them until the market in Florida, so we're talking 05, 06, when things started coming apart. And it came apart in Florida fairly quickly in that time frame, such that nothing was selling. After selling like wildfire based on questionable finances. Yeah, it was interesting that the waterfront condominiums we were selling, they were pre-selling them as soon as they stuck a shovel in the ground. There was originally supposed to be 6 buildings. Each one was each one probably had, how many units? 50 units, maybe? Ranging from 2-bedroom, 2-bath, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, and then 4 different types of penthouses. And they were selling as soon as they were released. We'd have a sales event on a Saturday morning, and people would come in and say, I'll take that one and that one and that one. And so it went through 3 buildings, all went like that, and then as the 4th one was coming on is when the market kind of went crazy. The developer at that point, we kept trying to tell him this can't go on at this pace and at these prices. We're not selling anymore, why don't you reduce the prices? No, we're not going to do that. So, okay. So we stopped selling. The market there was pretty bad at that point. In the meantime, based on my New Mexico roots, that's another whole story. we had been looking at land out here, saw the information about Deer Canyon Preserve, and my wife came out to help my son move into an apartment in Santa Fe with her sister, who's from Colorado, and they went and looked at Deer Canyon Preserve, called me while I was at a Cinco de Mayo party and said, let's buy a lot here.
Nice.
And having had a few margaritas at that point, I said, why don't we do that? So,
And what did you end up paying back then?
pardon?
Well, how much were the prices back then?
Oh, the prices back then, this was just before I went to work there, were phase one, which was the first phase, sold in the 95 to 110,000 per lot. Phase two, we were at the early part of phase two, they were 120,000 and up, and by the time we finished selling them, pretty much things had slowed down by 2008. We are actually selling some of them at 150 to 170,000. So, I mean, I think part of it was still the real estate wave, that it got to New Mexico
A little late.
later than it got to Florida, and it kind of moved across the country. So, anyway, after we had purchased the lot, I was in frequent conversations with the people at the sales office at Deer Canyon, and they said, well, gee, you know, maybe it slowed down there, but we're still doing well here. Why don't you come out and work with us? And I said, well, nothing happening here, might as well go out there. So we pulled up stakes, rented our house in Florida, moved to Mountain Air, and rented a place there. Was there for 2 years, and went to work for Deer Canyon Preserve. Deer Canyon Preserve was developed initially by a gentleman named Jim Winder, who was a lifelong New Mexico rancher. I believe still lives outside of Hillsborough, not New Hampshire, Hillsborough, New Mexico. Yes, Hillsborough, New Mexico. And he came up with the concept, which was put in place at Deer Canyon, but he had done actually three previous communities. One called Lake Valley, which is located between Hatch and Deming.
Okay. That's kind of remote.
Yes, it is. And there's not much there, and that was not a very large community. And I don't know exactly how large, but he then also did one in Corona, New Mexico, which is just outside of Spencer.
Yeah, we still haven't been there to Corona, but I've seen a house or two listed there that might be part of that community.
Probably was. And then he also did another one outside of Hillsborough called Berinda Creek. And that one was still active, and we actually sold the Berinda Creek properties from the Mountain Air office. Initially, there was a woman that covered Berinda Creek, but then she went off and did something else. And so the decision was made, if people want to look at property down there, we can drive down there from Mountain Air.
Nice little drive.
Yeah, it was a pretty good haul. The concept of all of the communities that Jim came up with was, let's buy up big New Mexico ranches. Let's take half of whatever we buy and immediately put half of it into conservation easement, so that land will be protected forever. And then the balance of the community would be split into, depending on the community, 20-acre home sites, which was Corona and Deer Canyon. Berinda Creek were 40-acre home sites, much more wide open spaces there. But the same concept, that each of the 20 or 40-acre home sites has a designated building envelope in which you can develop your property, fence it, do whatever you care to do, and you leave the balance of it wild and free, which in essence actually adds to the open space. But you've already experienced
Yes.
that. So. Anyway, I came out to New Mexico in 2006. At that point, we had 6 active salespeople and a sales manager,
Wow.
and a couple of administrative assistants and so on. Early on when I got there, Jim Winder, probably through 2006, was very much involved and kind of involved by himself. And he had a team of people that helped him map out the lots, walk the properties, develop where the building envelopes were. And then I believe it was 2006, he sold his interest to a company based out of El Paso called Verde Realty. Verde Realty had very deep pockets. And you were asking Judy, how did we get people there?
Yeah.
Because in the space, while I was there from 06 to 08, we sold 220 home sites,
Wow.
ranging in price, as I said, from 120 to 170,000. And it was done by national advertising. They advertised in a lot of outdoors-oriented magazines. And for instance, I think we originally saw it in the National Audubon magazine. That's how
Wow.
my wife and I found it. A lot of people found it through, they advertised heavily in Southwest Airlines, on-flight magazine. A lot of
Yeah.
people found it with that. And then radio advertising, which always surprised me, how effective it was. At targeted areas around the country, the concept being, gee, maybe when you first moved to the Chicago area, you were semi-rural, but now the city spread out and engulfed you. So they targeted Chicago, Washington, D.C., Orange County, California, San Francisco to a lesser extent, Florida, got a big presence in Florida, in the Miami, kind of Palm Beach area on the east coast of Florida. And they ran targeted radio ads during commute times. But I mean, speaking from my own experience, when I'm riding in the car and I hear an ad, I tend to switch to hear music on the next station. But, so 6 of us sat in the office there answering phones. Answering phones, explaining what was going on, and inviting people, if they wanted more information, to come on out. And we had, at one time, 4 guest houses, which were houses that people had already built in phase 1 that they weren't necessarily living in yet. So they were leased by Verde Corporation to use as guest houses. So people would come in to Albuquerque, drive out, we'd wine them and dine them, had special events of different kinds, and they got to spend the night on the preserve. And then the following day or days, we drove them around and looked at the different home sites, and they picked which one they wanted. Rumor has it that that radio advertising at its height was $200,000 a month.
Wow.
A month.
So you had to at least sell one lot a month to
Right.
cover the advertising.
And initially, they were providing financing on those lots.
Okay.
Most people bought them with cash, but a number of them bought with financing. A number of those that were purchased with financing, I know, got foreclosed upon.
Yeah.
And I know a few of the people that bought them, and I had the privilege of selling them again. So,
Are you still friends?
so that's really the story. About 2000, early 2007, Jim Winder had extricated himself from the process, so it was all being managed and done by Verde Realty out of El Paso. And and there was some pluses and some minuses to that. So,
Now, at one point, Verde got out of it too, because now it's all self-managed by the whole.
oh yeah, I mean, once the lots started selling and the sales office was closed, the intention had always been that Verde would turn the property over to the homeowners association. But that took a good deal of negotiation back and forth as to what would be included, what wouldn't be included, what Verde would do, to and including making sure all the wells were operating, and I know they had to do a lot of rehab on those and so on. So yeah, it was pretty contentious there for a couple of years, and I remember going to a few homeowners meetings where Verde was there and the homeowners were there, and it wasn't necessarily harmonious. But they finally got it done. Some of the key people out there did a great job on it. Tom Carroll being one who you know. Yes. And Jack Lockridge, he's in early part of phase 2. He's also an attorney. And then there's another gentleman named Kirk Stitt, who was, he's now retired, an accountant. And so he did a lot of the initial crunching numbers to what made sense and so on. So they were kind of the key people that negotiated the transfer.
Now we have a nice HOA, self-managed
Right.
environment that, you know, homeowners can enjoy and know that we don't have outside
Right.
interests
Exactly.
involved.
Right. And originally there was supposed to be a third phase of Deer Canyon, which was up on the top of Chupadera Mesa. And then it even gotten as far as they mapped all the lots out, put the roads in, the drives to each, much as you find in phase 1 and phase 2, but they had done that up on the top of the mesa. And there were grandiose plans for building a clubhouse up there.
Wow, that would.
I can tell you from having walked a bunch of the lots up there, the views from up there, views from phase 2 and phase 1 are pretty nice, but they were a step above. So,
What a shame.
yeah.
Because we've been trying to get up there, because we've seen the satellite, Google Maps satellite views, and you can see where they cleared some of the spots where the lots were going to go, and the roads and stuff. And you're right, it looks like the views might have been unbelievable.
Is that where that roadblock is?
Yeah.
Oh,
We can't
way out
get a
of phase
four-wheeler.
2?
Yeah, at the end of our area, going up the,
Yeah.
whichever.
Well, you used to be able to drive up there. It was always a little hairy, but the other way to get in is off of Route 55.
Okay, from the backside?
Yeah, there's another gate.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
We gotta find that gate.
Yeah.
yeah, it's
That would be
not hard
neat.
to find.
I
There's
know
a-
when you go down Deer Canyon and it there's one big washout area near the end of it, and then it starts going up a
Right.
steep hill. And we kind of stopped there and turned
Oh, yeah.
around.
Good
that was-
idea.
that was-
Even back when it was being developed, that road was pretty hairy. We'd go up there in our 4-wheel drive trucks, and it wasn't too bad, but I wouldn't want to try it now, because I know it's washed out a couple of
Oh,
times.
yeah.
But the other side was, that's a pretty well-developed road, and I'm told that, Tom Carroll told me that as homeowners, you can get a gate code, and you have to punch a code in order to get into it. And your normal gate access doesn't work there.
Okay.
Okay.
Matter of fact, one day I was showing land out there, and the client, I was at the gate, waiting, and this guy calls me up and said, "I'm at the gate, and I can't get in." And I said, "Well, I'm at the gate, you're not here."
Here, where are you?
And so finally I realized he was at that gate. And I tried to give him the gate code to get in, and it didn't work. And I called Tom, and he said, "No, it's a separate gate code just for people to access that who are homeowners." So that's why.
So that goes out on Highway 55 behind the mountains.
Yeah, you go take the big bend and keep going, and it's on the right-hand side, set up pretty high. And actually, if you go out a little further on the road, the original ranch house that was the ranch that became Deer Canyon, and I can't remember the name of the owners, is out there also.
Okay.
And then there's another community out further called Rancho Los Caballos that was developed about the same time as Deer Canyon one was. Same general concept, bigger lots. That's pretty nice, but it's pretty far out there.
If you want privacy, you want remoteness.
Yeah, yeah,
Enjoy that wildlife.
yeah.
That's amazing.
So, anyway, I mean, that's kind of the story of Deer Canyon Preserve. After the 2 years I spent here, because nothing was happening here, the market in Florida was beginning to pick up again.
Oh,
We hadn't sold our house because we were renting it, so I said, well, we might as well go back there. And I went back to work for a realty company called Michael Saunders and Associates. Michael is a very interesting person. Michael is a she,
Oh,
nice.
and she has the most successful independent. She's not part of, you know, a Keller Williams group or ERA or anything like that. Major force in real estate on the west coast of Florida, kind of from south of Tampa all the way down, not quite to Naples.
okay.
And so I went back there as an independent realtor working there. I finally partnered with another guy who I'd known previously. And the interesting thing is, remember those waterfront condos that we couldn't sell?
Yeah.
There were a bunch of them that didn't get sold, that were sitting there vacant. The developer had gone out of business. PNC Bank owned them, and so PNC Bank hired Michael Saunders and Company to be the on-site sales representatives to sell the balance of them.
So you're back to selling the same stuff again.
Except at probably 60% of what they were initially.
Okay.
And we sold 100 of them in a year and a half.
Wow.
I mean, when they asked me to go back there, they said, you were there before, would you sell them again? I said, yeah, sure, fine. I said, you don't think people are going to be upset with you? And I said, I didn't force them to buy anything. And for the most part, I mean, I still knew a lot of the people. They said, you know, one person got really upset. Why did you let me do that? I said, well, I didn't write the check, Dan. But for the most part, yeah, it went fine, and we sold out the remaining units, and then I did general real estate until we decided to come back to New Mexico.
So you lived on the preserve for a while?
No.
No, you never have. Okay.
No,
You bought the lot. and
bought the
then-
lot, we were gonna build on it, but the whole time we were renting, actually where you turn off to go to Deer Canyon, you take the big bend on 55.
Yeah.
Right.
On the left-hand side, there's a double wide that sits on 140 acres.
Okay.
And we lived there for 2 years. It was really nice. Guy in town owns that. There's a guy in town, very interesting guy, George Immerwar, and he owns that, plus every once in a while, if you put into the Torrance County, you know, if you're searching for property, you can put a name in or an address. If you put Immerwar in, you get this. He owns vacant land, he owns houses, I've sold a couple for him. Very nice guy, but yeah, he owned that and we rented from him, and it was delightful. And he had a horse, a mule, and a donkey on the property. The horse was, let's see, well, the donkey was easy, it was Donk. The mule was Bud, and I don't remember the horse's name. And then 4 head of cattle, I guess, that ran free.
Okay.
So it was delightful to live there. I mean, it was very nice. It was a happy time.
Nice.
So, So anyway, since then, that was 2008, I left there. Went back to Florida till 2011, and that's when we decided to move to New Mexico. Initially, we moved to El Dorado outside of Santa Fe, nice community there, and began to work for a smaller realty group with a woman who I had met when I was out here previously in a continuing education class, Maria Borden, and worked with her for several years, and then decided, as much as fun as it was working with Maria, and she's a great person and still a good friend, if I wanted to do more in real estate, I needed to get a little bit more backup, and that's when I switched to Keller Williams. So, and Keller Williams is a great company in terms of what they provide for their brokers. The technology is mind-boggling. And some of it, I think, and it's not just me that says that, it's gotten a little overdone and overly complex, that this system they built, which is called Command, does so many things, sometimes you get lost in it. And it's hard to control. But nonetheless, it's a great company to work for, very positive, probably of the different brokerages I have been exposed to, I think it's the most broker friendly in terms of what it does for people, in terms of technology, training, support of all kinds. So, and so here I am back in New Mexico and start getting inquiries from people that I sold lots to from Deer Canyon back in 06 to 08. And for years, nothing sold. Probably from, well, I came out back in 2011, probably not until 2015, 16, started getting them, but selling them, as you know, at greatly reduced prices.
Yeah.
And that's just kind of built on itself because of the relationships that I had with the people that I originally sold to. They'll call me up. Some of them will get right on it and realize that they're, not going to get what they spent for it. Other people will call up and say, "Can you sell my lot?" And I said, "Well, yeah, we can list it for, maybe 20,000, the most 30. Well, I can't sell it for that. You realize what I paid for it? I said, "Yeah, from my records, you paid 150,000 for it." And they'd say, "Well, I can't sell it for that." "Well, do you ever plan to build on it?" "No."
That's the problem. If they built on it, they'd get their money back out of it.
Well, no doubt,
Yeah.
but no. I mean, people are funny, and some people will say, "Okay, let's list it," and other people say, "No, I'll just hold on to it. I'll give it to my kids." I had somebody tell me that. And the kids are going to say, "Yeah, what do you want us to do with it?"
Kids just turn around and sell it.
Right. Well, anyway, so since then, I've been lucky enough to have those great relationships and have the pace of sales kind of comes and goes in waves. 3 years ago, I sold 5 or 6, I think, something like that. Then the following year, sold 3 or 4. Last year, sold 3 or 4, and so far this year, have sold 5. And it tends to go according to price, and the sweet spot for price is right now in the 20,000 to 25,000 range. That seems to get people calling up. I use targeted advertising. I do Facebook ads. Everything is on Facebook ads these days, whether it's houses around here or land out there. And then there is a website called land.com, which has spreads out to other land-oriented buyers. And so that's had good feedback from me too. But a lot of people will just see it by searching around, and they'll or see the Facebook ad and call up and inquire about it. So there we go. And then in addition to that, I've been lucky enough along with working with Chris Cavnar, we've sold 4 houses, 4 or 5 houses out there. Most recently, just put one under contract that's closing in 2 weeks to a couple that I actually sold the house to back 4 years ago, who have decided to relocate back to Wisconsin from whence they came. So real estate tends to be moving pretty well out there, whether it's lots priced correctly or houses. I mean, not only have we been able to sell some, but there's a couple of other brokers that have been somewhat successful. And it seems like houses out there are moving pretty briskly.
For being way out there, away
Right.
from the city.
I mean, it's got to be as you know, it's got to be the right fit for a person. It's
Right.
not for everybody.
Right.
And, a number of the people that bought lots back then that might want to sell them now just say, no, I don't think we're going to do that. Whereas they were pretty enthusiastic about it at that point. But the interesting thing is that most of the people that are buying them on a resale basis now do plan to build somewhere in the near term.
That's good.
So,
That's cool.
what other questions might you have?
Do you have anything else? Charlie did cover quite a lot.
Yes, thank you for giving us the story
Well,
of Deer Canyon Preserve. That's really
it's a-
neat.
It's a fun story.
Yeah, I always kind of wondered how you got people.
That's what it was.
'Cause we have
Radio
neighbors
advertising.
from New
Very
York,
targeted.
and we have neighbors from North Carolina, and yeah, it's neat.
California.
California, and I'm just like, okay, wait a minute, how did you guys, because we never heard of this, you
Yeah.
know?
Well, the Carrolls are from Chicago.
Yeah, exactly,
Right.
so it's like, wow,
Mm-hmm.
so that's
Yep.
neat how they targeted.
For us,
whatever it is.
We were looking at, trying to find somewhere to build that was away from the city, something that could give us a little country cabin or something that we
Right.
could build, or a small country home.
Right.
And we were looking all around the Albuquerque area, up into Harris and so forth, and most of the lots we looked at just didn't have much promise to them. There was usually no wells, and
Right.
all the granite there
Right.
looked impossible to put a septic.
Mm-hmm.
It just looked like nightmare to even consider building on. Maybe park an RV there or something and camp, but that was about it. Until you get into the developed areas like, what's that one, Sandia Park, or behind the mountains and stuff up there.
Sandia Park. Yeah.
Yeah, there's some lots that were buildable, but then you start getting into outrageous prices, and financing on land is rare.
Yes.
So it's like, do you really want to put a big chunk of money down for a lot, and you don't know how easy the building will go? So I had my cap of what I wanted to spend, and the stuff around the city area here, up behind the mountains, nothing was decent enough land to take that gamble
Right.
to want to build on and sink a little cash into it. And then I kept looking further and further out, and then I saw some lots that were really interesting price,
Yeah.
and I wanted to look at them, and that's when I
That's
got a
it.
hold of you.
Right. Exactly. Yep. And
Yeah.
that's what's happened with a lot of people. In terms of a good place to park an RV and so on, if that was allowed in Deer Canyon, I'd sell a lot more lots, because I can't tell you the number of people that would like to have a place they could park their RV, camp once in a while and so on, and then, go away again. But that doesn't work. I mean, you can camp on it 10 days of any 30 days.
Yeah.
But what I didn't realize, what I just found out recently, I mean, some people said, that's fine, but can we bring the water and electric so we can hook up? And you can't. That's not allowed.
Yep, you can't do that until you've got your permits pulled.
Right.
The design review.
And after all this time, that had just gone right over my head, because I actually had somebody ready to buy a a lot in phase one. They knew only 10 days and so on, and then they were all set to do it. And then we checked further with Tom Carroll and James Yeager, and they said, no, can't do that. So
you gotta build.
Right.
You wanna know. I mean, some of the interesting things about it, of course, there's no mineral rights for the homeowners, right? They support those steers and other watering holes for wildlife.
Several head of longhorn.
That no one can eat.
You know, the other day we saw the wild pigs.
Oh,
And
I
they're
haven't seen that.
little, they're tiny,
Yeah, I haven't seen those.
and that was really cool.
I think it was like 2 different times we saw
Yeah.
like 2 or
It was
3
like
of them
dusk,
just
I
running
think, wasn't
around.
it? Like close to dusk when we seen them.
Yeah, I mean, back when I was working there was no pigs out there. That's all. I mean, lots of other wildlife.
Oh yeah, rabbits, we've seen rabbits.
Lots of
Deer.
rabbits.
Foxes,
Deer,
deer,
beautiful. I haven't seen the
bobcats.
Squirrels,
I haven't seen the bobcat.
mountain lions.
some snakes.
Wow.
Oh yeah, there's Jack Lockridge, who lives early on in phase 2. Has a picture right on his kitchen window, and several other people have seen them too.
That would be so cool.
They're really,
Oh,
well, matter of fact,
gosh.
when they were working on mapping out phase 3 and putting the roads in, I can't remember the guy's name, who was kind of a general handyman, was in putting in the posts with the lot numbers on them.
Oh.
And he was up there a Sunday morning by himself putting a post in, and he said, I'm standing there and I'm thinking, somebody watching me? And he turned around, and about, I don't know, 50 feet was a mountain lion just standing there staring at it. So he backed up very slowly and got out of there. So.
Yeah, that's what his heart was like.
And there's elk up there too.
We haven't seen elk, we've seen deer.
Yeah.
Are there bears?
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Yeah.
That's,
We haven't seen bears yet.
and we don't
Elk,
throw,
bears,
you know, our food, we
big
don't.
cats.
And then we use the bungees to close our trash cans. I mean, we're really careful.
Right.
So careful not to attract.
And the other thing I didn't talk about was what the guest experience was like. I mean, I said we put people up in the guest houses,
Wine and dine them.
we'd wine and dine. I mean, we'd have big barbecues, and sometimes we had special events where we'd invite a lot of people too.
Okay.
So you'd have them, all the guest houses filled up, and people, we would rent motel rooms for them in town.
Okay.
And then have an event, like one time, we brought an astronomer in who set up a really incredibly beautiful telescope and, trained it on the sky and let everybody look at it and so on. Then we also frequently did horseback rides for people.
Okay.
There's a guy that lives outside of town, I don't think he does rides anymore, Mike, who would bring his horses out to the preserve and ride them around over hill and dale and trails and so on. Or sometimes we just go to his place, which is down Route 60, right near the Abo ruins.
Okay.
And you could ride out from his place. But yeah, so we took good care of people.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, give a little taste of what's going on. That's neat.
So to our viewers, thank you for coming along and meeting Charlie. And if you have any questions about any of the lots or real estate that is out there in Mountain Air, give Charlie a ring.
Yep, happy to help.
We'll go ahead and put in the description below his contact information. And thanks again for following us along on this adventure.
Okay.
Cheers.
Cheers. So we're back out in Mountain Air. We spent a few days in Albuquerque and met up with Charlie, as you just saw in our previous prior day here.
Yeah, that was fun. I mean, it was just to listen to his,
The
his life,
history.
his history, his life, his work life. It was just really, it was neat.
And
So,
the
and then
involvement of
yeah,
the early days.
of the
and
early days here
Deer
in
Canyon.
Deer Canyon. Yeah, wow. It's so if you haven't watched it, you should watch it because it's really interesting. I know I enjoy listening to his stories. So
Anyway, one of the reasons too, besides the chance to share with you Charlie and his real estate history and stuff, was we also had met up with Charlie earlier to make a tough decision, and we've went ahead and signed the paperwork to say goodbye to our 2 lots. So they're listed now, and it's
yeah, well, Thane, you need to tell
it's one of
me
those things we'll
why.
probably regret later, but at this point, looking at how we both feel and our health and where we're at in life, it just seems harder and harder to imagine all the work we got to take on in making an adobe home and all the bricks we'd have to be making, even with the aid of equipment. I'm just not sure we could really pull it off.
Well, and then Thane's still working.
Yeah,
He
that too is a
works.
problem, an
He's
issue.
still working, and he works 9-hour days. So it's like I don't know what they are, but yeah. It's how do you do that? And every time we turn around, he hurts his back, and it's like I'm getting better on a good note, and I'll share with you a little bit on another video, and then you can just click on it if you want, and if you don't care, then don't, just pass it on by. So
Anyway, so it looks like we're saying goodbye to the land and moving on. We will be keeping this house and living here. It's like we have the country home now. We don't have to build it. It's not everything I
Right.
want or
But
Judy
it-
wants,
yeah,
but it's still nice.
It's really nice. The windows are so well built, and the doors and the layouts and the deck. Oh my gosh! I mean, I could just go on and on and on.
Yeah, this deck's going to
But
outlive us. I'll
It's
show you.
gonna outlive us.
That synthetic material here is just awesome.
It is awesome. The only thing you need to paint is just the little railing.
Yeah.
And
Anyway, it's about time for the sunset here, so we'll flip over and we'll say goodbye for now and let you enjoy our sunset.
but